Hello everyone. So tonight, unfortunately, Dr. Malone had to reschedule as being a guest on our show, but we are going to post the event we held last night with Tom Holman and Sarah Carter and other individuals from the Border 911 team, which was held in the southwest side of Chicago in a very deep blue Democratic neighborhood of city workers. And they shared the dangers of illegal immigration, while we also had local community leaders speak about how their communities are being affected and impacted by the illegal immigration of Mayor Brandon Johnson and Mr. Biden. So you're gonna enjoy this. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention for a moment? Ladies and gentlemen, have your attention for a moment, just a moment. You don't have to stand up, you don't have to take your hat off, but I'd like to watch you take a look at this little video coming up. We did this in Sturgis, this was a godsend. It said, you can't, we did. If you'll give your undivided attention and give us some silence as though you're listening to the Star Spangled Banner. Can you hear me over there? Thank you. Please watch this video. Thank you. Go. Thank you. Here it goes. That was the world's largest American flag in the world. 3,000 pounds, and it was unfurled in 2020. We'll help you do it again. God bless you.
Hello everyone, Terry Newsom. I'll introduce myself a little later. We're going to get started. I apologize if we got started late. The food got out there late. We're going, oh, see, the food line's getting shorter. So we're going to start out with the national anthem with Dr. Yerkes Ken. And he's a real doctor, like the dentist doctor. And he's like a karaoke champion. So he's going to sing the anthem, and then we're going to have Paul Drabeck. Where's Paul? Paul Drabeck. He's my partner on our podcast, Behind Any Lines. He's a combat vet. He's going to do the pledge, and then we're going to have a prayer. When I got to look at it over here. So, Ken, get your tonsils ready. to the left. We got a big flag to the left there on that left wall. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, came through the night, that a flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. So Paul on the podcast, he's the brains of like the shock jock. So you guys, whoever watches us, he's the brains of the shock jock. So go ahead, brains, do your thing.
Thanks, buddy. I'll take that as a compliment. Well, hey, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming today. About almost a year ago, Terry and I started this podcast because we knew one thing that we repeat very often, and it's that we're in a war. I fought in combat in Iraq, so I know what a war looks like. This is a different kind of war, right? It's an information war. And one of the biggest stories that Terry and I wrote, some pictures of it on the wall over there, was about illegal immigrants coming into suburban communities. You know, a lot of us were made to believe that they're just in Chicago. But then Mayor Johnson shut them down from coming into Chicago when they were coming in to the suburbs. And we were told by our mayor that, oh, they're getting on the train and they're all going into the city. But Terry went to the train station and he started engaging with these illegals. You know, he put the camera in their face as a citizen journalist, right? He didn't know anything about journalism 2 years ago when we met, when we started fighting against the indoctrination of kids in our schools. But somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to fight for this country. Those somebodies are in this room right here. They're you. They're you. And tonight we're going to hear some brave and great patriots who are going to talk to us about what a secure border looks like, right? What good immigration policy looks like. And we know what it looks like because we all saw what Donald Trump did for this country, right? We all know what a great America can look like. And we all have to come to grips with the fact that the Democrats have become communists, right? And all of this is being done for a reason. The simple, fundamental thing about it is they're growing government and they want to take away your freedoms. And that's why they're introducing all the chaos in the system. The only way to fight back is to use the Constitution as your sword and shield. So get out there, go to meetings, speak out, and stand up for your rights. And that is how we're going to win back this country, and that's how we're going to win back Illinois. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming, and if everybody would stand up, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, so next, we're going to Jose Acevedo. Are you telling me? So he's going to do the prayer for us. And go ahead.
May I kindly ask you to once more stand on your feet in reverence to God Almighty? Thank you. Let us bow our heads. Father, we come to you in the name of your Son, Jesus. I know that we are here with one thing in common. We love this nation. And we want nothing but the best for this nation. We pray as one man that you would bless this nation and bless all of those that are in the front lines, that are doing their very best to protect from all enemies. And Father, we pray that you keep this nation safe from all of her enemies, Father. And we pray for those that are in this panel today, that they're going to be sharing their strategies, ideas, their thoughts, that we would have a hearing ear and to perceive the voice of God behind the things that they're going to share. We pray that your fear will come upon all of us. And blessed is the nation whose God is Jehovah. Father, give wisdom to those that are making a difference to restore this nation to its glory. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless America. God bless you.
Thank you. So, thank you everybody for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. We're here for a reason. When I first talked to Tom about coming here, about scheduling something in Chicago, he wanted to come into an area where it has a mix of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So I grew up in the Southwest Side, for those of you who know me. My father worked for the city of Chicago. My mom over there, they're sitting separate tables. They got divorced 35 years ago. So I'll tell you my grandparents came from Italy. I grew up in an Italian, American, Union family. I'm still in the Union, right? And this is my whole family, our whole neighborhood. For those of you who are from around here, many of us were Democrats, right? We grew up as Democrats. That's all I knew. Matter of fact, when I became a registered Republican in 2013, my mom got upset with me as I was starting to do that. And I'm like, come on, Mom, transition. It's like, it's in style now. And, sorry, that's a joke. So, we wanted to have it here so that we could pull in people from all over the Southwest Side or wherever you came here for a specific reason, because, they're from Border 911. Tom and his whole team are Border 911, right? Well, there's no more southern border. There's no border. This is the border now, right? So everyone saw what happened on the news for the last few years at the border. Always on the border, right? Well, you know what? The border is here now. And if we don't come together as Americans, if we don't come, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Italian. It doesn't matter if you live in the inner city, in the suburbs. The war is here. Our enemies are here. They're on our soil. Right? There's crimes that are going, so first they landed into Chicago, now they're in the western suburbs. They're in the Oak Brook Mall, right? They're in Western Springs. They're down the block from my house. We had, sorry. I had FOIA reports, and you guys can't see this. If you go to behind enemy lines, human sex trafficking. You guys remember the Obama phone? Remember that? They were talking about the Obama phone? It's called the Vortex phone. I have 600 police reports. 600 from 3 locations in Chicago. And there's human sex trafficking using the Vortex phone. I know you can't see it, but this is from the inn of Chicago, the Magnificent Mile, right? So from Chicago, that's where people come from all over the world to shop. 2 238 police reports in 12 months. 238, right? This is one of 30 shelters. I ran 2 more police reports. I have almost 600 police reports. I was raised Italian Catholic. I'm not a good Catholic, which means I'm a regular Catholic. No, sorry, Jen, I know that. And Catholic Charities is basically the pipeline. They're the logistics and distribution arm for the cartels. I went to the Inn of Chicago, all this stuff you get, if you go to our website, Fighting Behind Enemy Lines. I went with my Hispanic buddy, Val Ojeda, who spoke Spanish, and we talked to a couple of Venezuelans. And I had to translate, and I said, did Catholic Charities help them here in Chicago? They said yes. I go, did Catholic Charities help them in the Mexican border? They said yes. I go, did you have to go through the cartels to get here? They said yes. So the Catholic Charities, for those of you who are Catholic, like, I know this is the Southwest side, right? There's a lot of Irish fanatics here, right? Yes? No? A lot of Italian Catholics here? So unfortunately, our church is sponsoring the destruction of America. And I'm sorry about that, Jim. I know it's not for Catholics to go to church and stuff, but we need to stand up as Americans. We have to stand up and tell them to stop doing this. They're destroying our kids' future. We're in a war. Most people don't even realize we're in a war, and we're losing the war badly. And so we can't sit by idly and let our church get paid through whatever organizations that are funding them, and they're making lots of money to destroy America. I got involved in this with my children. There was people that died for America. There's soldiers that died. I was never in the military. My father was in the military. I never joined the military. We're in the most important war of our lifetime. Not to take anything away from those that died, got injured in the wars, right? We're in the most important war because if we don't win this war, our children, our grandchildren are done, right? Are done. I started, if you guys saw in the end there with the pornography, they're indoctrinating our kids with drag queens and all this crazy stuff. Yes. Thank you, Pitch Lord. It's not about anti-gay, it's about fighting for America. All this stuff is intertwined together, right? They're pumping. The enemy is on our shores, and these guys are going to talk about it, right? The enemy is here from China. There's special ops folks here. Sargis is here. Sargis is here. He knows about what was going on when he was in the military. They're here. They're looking for the people that stand up and talk and fight and protest. They're going to recruit them to hurt our children, to hurt us. So again, this is a bipartisan event. I copied Tom. We invited Mayor Johnson, right, Tom? We invited Mayor Johnson and his staff. I sent him 2 emails. And I said, why don't you come and address the community? We're going to have minorities. And it's really not, say minorities, right? It's like, but I said it to him on purpose, right? And I said, we want you to come here and address the community, these community leaders. And I want you to tell them why, and I put quotes, illegal Venezuelan immigration is good for the city of Chicago, and why is it good for minority communities? So, that's all. Hey, Christine, come on over here, sorry. She helped me set this up. She's over here waving at me, I'm so sorry. So, Christine lives in the Southwest side. I just want to say hello, all right? Hello, and then she lives over here. She helps me for her.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's important what's infecting our area right now. There is an illegal immigrant shelter in 85th and Cicero. Did everyone know that? So I went there. They get a year. First, they get 3 months at the hotel. They get food vouchers. Then after that, they get a year of housing, wherever they want, wherever they tend to. And what was alarming there is, it's not families, it's single men. Yep. That is 3 blocks from my district, 3 blocks from our district, District 36. It's important that we are all here listening to what the panel has to say and to learn from their expertise. We can't possibly learn everything. We learn from the people who are out there. So thank you all very much for coming. I'm excited to hear what the panel has to say. And get involved. Get involved with all the organizations that are here that want to make a difference. Thank you for the
Trump's ex-acting ICE director. So, you got pencils on your tables. Hey, you guys got pencils on your tables. Write down some questions. Mark Raven's going to pick them up. At the very end, we're going to pick some, randomly pick some of the questions. We're probably going to pick the better ones, so you better write a good one. So, anyway, write down questions. We're going to address them again.
How you doing? So the first thing I gotta do, I have to do this because I have to protect our attorneys, and I have to do this, I have to do this. Board of 911 Foundation is a 501c3, which means tonight, the Board of 911 people, we can't be political. We can't talk about what president's better than other president, we can't tell you how to vote. We're just here to give you the facts that you're probably not hearing, what's happening on the board, and you can make your own decision. There's just be a nonpartisan event, that's what we are as a board of 501c3, I'll leave it at that. Look, I got a great team, they're going to be up pretty soon. I got Rodney Scott, Chief of the United States Border Patrol, for 30 years, Rodney, come on up. I got Casey Jones, Captain of Texas DPS, spent an entire career investigating cartels. I got Derek Moss, career DEA, fighting the fentanyl crisis. Who's my personal hero, who was shot serving as an ICE agent in Mexico. He knows criminal cartels, he knows sex trafficking. Victor. And I say this for last. The beautiful Sarah Carter. Who's so I put this team together for one reason, to educate the American people on the truth on the southern border. Again, we're nonpartisan, so we're going to just talk to you about the facts. I want to address one thing before I head over Rodney. 6 terrorists arrested last 40 hours. First of all, it's not a coincidence they're arrested in sanctuary cities. New York, Philadelphia, LA. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. They're sanctuaries for future terrorists. That's why they go to these cities, because the law enforcement cannot work with ICE. ICE is hamstrung. So it's not a coincidence. We have to shut down sanctuary cities. We got to end them. And now I'm going to I've done more talk shows in the last 2 days on this issue, and I'm doing Fox and Friends tomorrow. And what I've been bitching about for 3 years is that this is the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. We have 366 people on the terrorist watch list that were arrested in the last 3.5 years. That just scared the hell out of us. We got almost 2 million known gotaways. What's a known gotaway? We captured on video, drone traffic, sensor traffic. We found footprints where Border Patrol couldn't respond. 2 million known gotaways. Why did they get away? Why did they pay more to the cartels to get away? Because they didn't want to be dead. They wanted to be fingerprinted. That just scared the hell out of them. I've said for 3 years something's coming. Director Ray of the FBI, who I don't really like, he agrees with me. More red flags right now than I've ever seen before. We have to secure our border, protect America. You can't have strong national security if you don't have border security. Any idiot in the world can understand that. So, people say, well, they better that border. Look, any administration, Republican, Democrat, terrorists can get in the country. The problem is the vetting is poor. The vetting is not what you think it is. The media wants you to think. Rodney Scott, who spent a career in the vetting industry, is going to talk more about that. So I'm going to shut up right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Rodney Scott, Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol.
As they say, retired chief. Hey, so before we get going, I just want to let some people in the back know real quick. There's a few seats up here. If you can't see or hear good, and then we just vacated a table that's kind of premier seating length as well. Hey, I want to talk to you guys, and again, Rodney Scott, I was the chief of the Border Patrol. It was a very, very important part of my career I want to highlight. I was the chief of the Border Patrol under the Trump administration and the Biden administration because I was a career government employee. I was a Border Patrol agent for the whole time. I was never a political appointee. So again, we're going to talk to you a little bit about facts. But before I forget, if you have a pen or you can go back and look at the video of this later, I highly encourage you to write down a website, and it's simply C as in customs, B as in border, and P as in protection.gov. And if you go onto that website, there's a link at the top that I'm very proud that I helped participate in creating when I was the chief. It says newsroom. And then after you click on newsroom, if you go down below that, it says stats and summaries. If you will learn to use that website and stop reading the far left, far right spin and look at the sheer numbers, it's just facts and evidence. There's all kinds of information on there about what is being caught actually crossing our border. The gotaways are not on there, so you do need to know about that. But I encourage you to go back and look at that routinely. So this is why it matters. I want to do a little level set before we talk about some of the local impacts. What is border security? Please, if you get nothing else tonight, get this piece. Border security and immigration policy are not synonymous. The media and a lot of people talk about it as if it's the exact same thing. It is not. And for the purposes of this conversation today, I need you to understand that border security and immigration are separate. They are intertwined, but they are separate. Bad immigration policy makes it impossible to secure the border. But that piece, securing the border, is a separate thing. Good policy makes it significantly easier to secure the border. So what does that mean? I need you to shift gears for a minute and just think about your house, because we all overcomplicate border security, and honestly, it is a little bit complicated. But if we get into every little piece of border security, we'll be here for days. So I want to overly simplify it for this conversation. Think about your home. I don't care if it's an apartment, I don't care if it's a house, I don't care if it's a trailer. Throughout the world, throughout history, people have established set entry points where a visitor is going to come talk to you or come stay in your home or come to your community, they're supposed to go to. If anybody tries to sneak in here for your home, that's usually the front door, right? If anybody tries to come into your house at any place other than the front door or outside of normally accepted times, that usually elicits some type of a response, and it's usually a negative response. There's nothing racist about that, xenophobic, or anything else. That is the way it is around the entire world. Border security is set up exactly the same way. Border security, since the dawn of time, has been used, whether it's a village or here now we're talking about the nation, to prevent threats from getting into your home, into your village, into your town. Prevention is the key. That's what border security is set up for, is to deter. Border security is exactly like your house. We have 328 legal ports of entry. Think of that as a front door, where people are supposed to come and go from the country. Anybody that tries to come into the country or anything trying to bring something into the country that comes in at any place other than that front door is out of line. Think about this for a minute, and this is why I say policy is secondary. All law, beyond immigration, but all immigration law, all customs laws are established with the fundamental expectation that we can enforce them. That you literally have the capability to have a conversation with somebody to decide, do they meet the criteria? When people go around our front door and sneak into the country or try to enter the country without going through the front door, it completely wipes out the entire conversation about policy. And that's why I said you have to separate the two. I also want you to understand that border security is much bigger than the immigration discussion that we're having here in Chicago for very important reasons and around the globe. Right now, today, as we speak right now, the Mexican cartels are using illegal aliens that some of them don't even understand what they're being used for. It's irrelevant. They use them to overwhelm law enforcement on the border. And when I say overwhelm, some people don't understand that. I mean literally wipe out all law enforcement resources in a specific set area. The cartel pays people to watch the border all the time. They basically figure out how many people they need to push across from remote areas. Border Patrol's now busy. It's the second wave that is the most significant threat. The cartels basically use that first wave of illegal immigration to create huge holes in border security. And then the second wave includes anybody that is afraid to be fingerprinted, that doesn't want to meet a law enforcement officer and is willing to pay more, or the narcotics, you're going to hear about more. The fentanyl, you're going to hear about more. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. And when I'm not talking about the individual illegal immigrant, we're talking about the entire favor conspiracy. Hidden in that second wave, and sometimes now even in the first wave, and this is why you need to go back to cbp.gov, look at the stats, and sanity check everything I tell you today. Because nothing I'm telling you is political, nothing I'm telling you is not verifiable. 47,000 Chinese coming into the United States, the vast majority of which are single adult males. Traditionally over my career, the most, and that was just this year so far, over my career, the most we ever caught in a year was about 1,500. That's only one example. I think as we go through the panel today and we talk to some of the locals, we're going to talk more and more about other threats. But that is a nation-state threat, a nation that has said that they want to rule the world, they want to control the world, and that we're their enemy. They're bringing fentanyl, they're bringing people in independent on their own, and then you guys are dealing here a lot with the gang and the cartel issues as well. Last but not least, the border is a transit point, just like your front door. The idea behind border security isn't to basically take names and then to report crimes after the fact. It's to prevent threats from getting into your home to be able to hurt your children. What you see on the news all the time, if you're watching any of the mainstream, like the right-wing media that shows stuff on the border currently, doesn't stay there. I can tell you my experience with the Border Patrol, one of the safest towns in America is El Paso, Texas. You know why? Because no one's stopping. They're going to Chicago, they're going to Decatur, Illinois, they're going to Springfield, Illinois, they're going to every suburb around here and every town, city, and state across this nation. So please keep in mind, we're talking, as you look in the night, border security is simply knowing and controlling who and what enters our home. And your home is this entire nation. Terry was going to come back up. We want to talk a little bit about the local impacts, what you're seeing here, and then we're going to shift back to the panel. We got started a little bit late, so we'll kind of try to abbreviate because we want to make sure we get to questions and answers. But Terry, was I wrong with that? Or you wanted to bring up some of the local impact, or you want us to just keep it? Actually, we'll get back to the local impact at the end, I guess, then. So we're going to jump ahead. So, actually, I'm not going to introduce you, Victor. So Victor basically did the investigative side of what I did. I'll hand off. Sorry.
Hello, Justin. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Victor Avila. I'm retired special agent with Homeland Security Investigations under ICE, and I've worked most of my career on the border, El Paso, Texas, in Mexico, Central America, and Europe. I've worked a lot of the cartels, the money laundering, and the trafficking. My subject matter expertise is human trafficking investigations and victim identification. And so I trained a lot of police forces around Mexico and Central America and conducted a lot of human trafficking investigations, rescuing women and children from those cases that you hear, that you think, sometimes people say, that doesn't really happen. That's not real. Child trafficking doesn't exist. Well, I'm here to tell you that unfortunately it does, and it's one of the most horrific crimes that I have ever witnessed. Evil, if you would, there's hard to describe. When it comes to the open border system right now, I want to do one thing first, and it's one of my pet peeves because it's important to understand, because you've probably been hearing the term human trafficking a lot. Human trafficking, look, all these people are being trafficked across the border. And you gotta understand that there's two types of violations occurring at the border. One is human trafficking and the other is human smuggling, which is very different. Human smuggling is when the person voluntarily pays to the cartel a fee to be entered into the country. Now, what's been different in the last 3.5 years is that the cartel doesn't care if you come in and you turn yourself into the Border Patrol, or if you come in the back of a tractor trailer undetected. They don't care. they get paid their money. That's smuggling. And smuggling means from the border all the way here to Chicago, Colorado, anywhere. The human trafficking part, there has to be 3 elements to that. There has to be force, fraud, or coercion, except if you're a minor. If you're a child, you don't have to prove that. Another thing that you have to don't prove, a lot of times when people hear the term trafficking, they think movement, because yes, people are moved, but it doesn't necessarily have to have movement involved. So there are a lot of people being trafficked from all over the world into the United States. But you need to understand that there's a lot of U.S. citizens being trafficked here as well, locally, by traffickers. And another thing I'll say to make it clear, prostitution still exists in this country. Not all prostitution is human trafficking. And so it gets a little convoluted, a little gray area, because do we have victims of human trafficking involved in prostitution? Of course we do. Sure. And it's actually very difficult to detect. That's what I worked, that's what I did. But prostitution, if you're a prostitute and willingly do that, that's not trafficking, that's still prostitution, and that still continues to happen to this day. So it's very difficult because the traffickers know that. So they try to blend these victims. So another thing we think about sex trafficking as the only trafficking, but the other trafficking that has actually increased a lot under this administration is forced labor. And we have children working in this country in sweatshops, in Chicago, in New York, in Florida, in the food industry, in the chicken plants, those type of businesses where they have exploited these kids. Now, Rodney mentioned this. A lot of the times, human smuggling is where it gets a little tricky. Human smuggling can become trafficking. And that's what's actually happening a lot right now, because the illegal alien doesn't have the total amount to pay the cartel, or any of the money. And I'll give you an example that I spoke to a 20-some-year-old, 21, 22-year-old kid from Nicaragua. And I told him how much, this was down in Del Rio, Texas. I go to the border all the time. Jason and I just got back from Arizona. We were in Eagle Pass. We're at the border all the time. And this was in Del Rio a few months ago, and I asked him how much did the cartel charge him. He said $8,500. And I said, where in the heck did you get $8,500 to pay the cartel? He said, actually, I didn't pay him. I told him the $8,500. And he was going to Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was wearing a little hoodie. And I told him, you're going to freeze your eyeballs. You have no idea the winter that you're about to experience. Nicaragua is a very tropical weather location. And so, what's going to happen with this individual is the cartel now owns him like a property. And that person will do whatever the cartel asks to do. Because you know what he told me? That he has to pay him back $1,000 a month and $300 penalty if he's not with the payment on time. If he doesn't give that payment on time, that's worse than any credit card interest rate. And if he doesn't pay, because I kind of told him, hey, you made it to Minneapolis and hang with the cartel.
Yeah.
You made it. Yep. No. He says the cartel is there in Minneapolis making sure that I pay. And if I don't pay, they kill my parents and take the house and live it out. So guess what that kid's gonna do? Whatever the cartel asks them. They will enroll him in a community college to sell the fentanyl, meth, or attract females and engage them and get them as human trafficking victims. Whatever crime, work, construction, it doesn't matter. That's what's happening right now. The smuggling is becoming trafficking, and so it gets a little confusing, I understand, but just understand that there's a couple of crimes being committed here. And so there's a lot more to go into, but the movement of the people, and Jason's gonna go more into this, where the cartels have evolved. The cartels used to be drug trafficking organizations. We used to call them DTOs. They never really messed with the humans. When I invested in human smuggling organizations, that's what they were. They're human smugglers, and even as a matter of fact, the human traffickers were separate. I took down human trafficking organizations. That's all they did, is victims. That's all they did. Well, the cartels started finding out a few years ago that, wait a minute, these humans pay a lot of money, both smuggling and trafficking, especially the trafficking, because that victim keeps on giving and paying and paying. When you the drug dealer brings a kilo of cocaine into Chicago and sells it, tremendous profit, but now he has to go back and get another kilo, right? Well, the victim keeps on giving and giving, and the victims that I rescued, some of those were seeing John's customers 30, 40, or 50 a day at $50, $60 to $100 per visit. You do the math, that's one victim. Think about 50 victims. Think about 1,000 victims. That's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that the cartel now owns. This is how grown the cartels have become. This is how evolved they've become. They have their hands in a lot of other things that we're going to talk about tonight. But that's what I want to tell you about tonight: human trafficking, human smuggling, and the movement, and how really it's been devastating because it's carte blanche for them right now. There's no enforcement on the Mexican side. There's very little enforcement on the American side, and they're doing whatever they want to do, and it's getting done. And it's an exploitation that you see it. You see it locally, what's happening with the crime, with the unable to vet, and we're going to get into all that, all these things that we're going to talk about. But we're going to pass this on next to, who's next? You're coming up, Derek. Derek, ex-DEA, and I'll tell you more about where he came from and his expertise. But thank you for your attention, and we'll take your questions early. Next round. Thank you.
Yes, Victor. As Tom said, Victor almost died, and his partner died in Mexico because they were ambushed by these savages, okay? They're not afraid to shoot U.S. government agents that are on the ground, and he's a hero, like Tom said. So, my name is Derek Waltz. I'm from New York. I'm not from Illinois. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm with a great team of American patriots. We love talking to the community because we want to give you facts. Forget about the TV, forget about podcasts, we're going to give you the facts. There's a lot of experience here. So my expertise is I ran the DEA Special Operations Division for the last 10 years of my career. We had 30 agencies, we had 3 countries, and we synchronized efforts to go after the biggest transnational criminals in the world. Chapo Guzman was Chicago's public enemy #1. So one of the last operations we were involved in is taking him down, getting him in jail. Of course, he escaped, and then we got him again, and he's in jail for the rest of his life. And now we're working on his other members of his organization. Now, during that time, I had a unique picture of the world. I worked with the military, the intelligence community, and law enforcement, state and local. I was the head of the New York Task Force, the oldest and largest task force. My father was the head for 11 years, working with the NYPD. My brother died in Afghanistan, so yeah, I got a lot of passion because I have kids and I want my kids to have a good life, like all your kids, your grandkids, your nephews, and your nieces. So when I got done with DEA, I started following my passion because it was a calling from above to support the men and women in this country fighting every day, and also support the families that are burying their babies to fentanyl poison. So, you can't see this, please hold this up. You can't see this, but I started making collages a few years ago. And the reason I did it is because I wanted America to wake up that these are kids, they're white, they're black, they're Hispanic, they're Muslim, they're Asian, it doesn't matter. We don't care what they look like, they're Americans. And we get really upset. But what really got me upset was that the families were pissed off and angry when they found their 13-year-old baby in the bedroom blue on the bed, dead, from taking a half a pill what they thought was Xanax or Percocet or OxyContin. It was fentanyl poison made in the labs in Mexico. Now let me regroup here. So in 2005, 2006, you guys may not remember this, there were a lot of deaths in the Midwest, specifically Illinois area, from fentanyl, illicit fentanyl. And no one knew what the hell it was, including me as the head of the DEA Special Operations Division. What happened was the DEA, Chicago police, and others figured out it was a fentanyl lab in Toluca, Mexico. 2005. That's a long time ago, okay? That's because the cartels started experimenting in synthetic drugs. It was a moneymaker. Instead of growing the poppies and converting into opium and making heroin, too much work. Let's just get some chemicals from our friends in China, okay? And they started making the stuff, but it kind of failed a little bit. We had a few years, they weren't pushing it into the country. But what they were doing, and Jason's gonna get into this too, they were producing mass amounts of methamphetamine, which a lot of people aren't talking about. But Chicago was ground zero for methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, and money laundering, okay? This whole area is saturated with it. And the deaths are overwhelming, okay? So the Chinese have been doing precursor chemical business with the cartels for 30 plus years for methamphetamine. But when the Chinese figured out that they could destabilize our country under this disguise of drug addiction, it was a home run strategic plan. Why? Because we're the biggest adversary of CCP, China, right? They want to destabilize us, and they want to do it in a smart, strategic way. So what did they do? In 2008, 2009, when I was the head of the SOD operation, we started seeing K2 spikes and bath salts all over the country. Chicago, we had people that were dying because they were bleeding from their eyes and their ears from this substance they thought they were taking was synthetic marijuana. No, it was poisonous chemicals made in Wuhan, China, and other labs coming to the streets of America. People don't know that. I only know because I was the head of the operation. I had no idea what the hell this was. We sent informants to the labs. We took videos of these big labs. They started this synthetic drug stuff. Then in 2012, we started seeing deaths reported in America. We had no idea they were reported as heroin deaths until the autopsy reports came back. Autopsy reports came back as fentanyl, illicit fentanyl, not the stuff when you go into the hospital, you have cancer, you get an IV patch, you have a drip. That's legitimate fentanyl. That's really important when it's administered by the hospital or the doctor. But not when the Chinese are making it in labs in China. So we started seeing the death rates from fentanyl like this. And guess what? No one was paying attention because they were writing off, oh, that kid's a bad kid, that guy didn't take care of his kid, and the kid should know better. No, it's a poisoning. They were deceived to death. Sarah Carter, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I love her. You know why? She's always ahead of everything else because she investigates. She got a lot of sources. She did a film, and she asked me to be part of it in 2017, 2018, called Not in Vain. The reason I bring that up is because Sarah Carter was talking about all the things that we're talking about today, but no one was paying attention. But I have clips on her, on her movie talking about China, talking about the poisoning. It wasn't yesterday, okay? So flash forward. In 2014, it was such an emergency. Now that's 10 years ago. We went to Eric Holder, the Attorney General, and briefed him on an emergency operation called Deadly Merchant. Fentanyl was coming into this country, killing Americans at record levels. It was what I call the perfect storm of death and destruction. When you have China working with Mexican cartels and Dominicans in America, that concerned me because they have the distribution outlets throughout America, okay? So, of course, it was new to the government. There wasn't a lot of action. But then when I retired, I took on the calling to help the families. So, Lost Voices of Fentanyl, write it down. It's a group of mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters that are watching their babies die. And no one's talking about it. So we did the collage project, we started getting attention. Border 911 was at the event last year in Washington, D.C., supporting these families because they're desperate. They are an army of families in America trying to save other kids because the government is not even educating the kids. You know why? The kids spend all day long on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all day long. They They're not watching mainstream media. They're not listening to Behind Enemy Lines. They're not listening to Sarah Carter on Fox News or Tom. They're watching the videos. So I've been calling for the White House to declare a public health national security emergency and start getting the professional athletes, the role models, LeBron James, Steph Curry, all these athletes that the kids look up to, and start doing 30-second videos. But no, they don't want to do that. Why? Because it's political. Well, guess what? Go talk to the families that are burying their little babies. By the way, anyone pay attention to the 1-year-old in the Dominican kid in New York City? His mom drops him off at the daycare center, and he goes down, he dies, 2 other or 3 other get sick, they get revived by Narcan, but then instead of the daycare center worker calling 911, she calls her boyfriend or her husband to come get the stash of fentanyl out of the daycare center. And they got him on video. Well, he just pled guilty because law enforcement's pretty damn good. They tracked him in Mexico and they got him. But the point is that 1-year-old didn't have substance use disorder. That 1-year-old touched some poisonous substance coming from China or Mexico labs and died. The DEA reported last year 80 million fake pills of fentanyl have been seized in America. The DEA administrator reported 7 out of 10 pills have a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. A couple of years ago, it was 28%. So it's skyrocketing. Just to give you an idea, and Jason's going to get into the impact of the cartels. The Sinaloa cartel controls Sonora, Mexico. In Phoenix, Arizona, the DEA, in 2015, they seized 0 fake pills. Last year, 45 million. Just the DEA, because Sinaloa cartel controls the corridor. And as Rodney said, as they're flooding the zone and inundating the Border Patrol, they're bringing all the poisonous stuff over here, all the high-value targets over here, and now they're throughout the country. So, let me just say this, and I'm almost done. I got a lot to say, only 10 minutes, and I'm lucky I talk fast. But here's the thing. The Chinese are beyond the fentanyl poisoning. Now they're making more potent synthetic opioids called the nitazines. Isonitazine, etonitazine, protonitazine, 20 times, 40 times more potent than fentanyl. You can go online and buy it. They're selling xylazine for $1 a kilogram on the websites in China. Xylazine is the horse tranquilizer, they call it trank on the streets. It's a zombie drug. It's literally causing necrosis, rotting of the human tissue. Jason was up in Kensington. Sarah's been up there. I've been up there. He's got unbelievable videos out there. It's causing people to just rot on the streets. This is a beautiful strategic plan by China. Now they have a new synthetic, it's a new drug, it's called metatomidine. It's another trank, it's another very, very potent, you cannot be revived by Narcan, okay? It's not an opioid. It's destroying the bodies from within. And the DEA reported 30% of all the fentanyl that they seized, because in addition to the 80 million pills, they seized 12,000 pounds. The equivalent of 380 million deadly dosage units. But here's the thing. When they do these analysis and they see it's all, there's 30% it's now got xylazine mixed in with the fentanyl. So make no mistake, the CCP is behind this. The Congressional House Select Committee on China, I helped them. I went to the website with them. They're giving tax rebates to export fentanyl out of China, fentanyl analogs, and these dangerous, deadly chemicals. So, yes, we're in a war with China. It's not the traditional war. It was already said by someone before. So, we all have to pay more attention. And I just want to thank everyone. I can talk all night. I'm very hyped up because I know there's some good Americans here that care. And so do we. That's why we left our families behind to come here and talk to you. Thank you very much.
I never know how to follow him. He's an amazing man. He's my hero. And we met, like you said, Derek, we met way back when I was trying to warn everybody about what was happening in our country. How many of you have children? How many of you have children? Yeah. Grandchildren, nieces and nephews. I want you to be very scared. I want you to feel the way Derek and I, Victor, Jason, Rodney, and Tom feel every single time we speak before the American public. We want you to wake up. We don't want you to be living in a dream anymore. We want you to see the reality. Kind of like the Matrix, right? The red or the blue pill. What are you going to take? The reality is that we are at war. And I have spent my career covering this war. More than 20 years covering this war. And more than 20 years ago, when I first started covering the border from the inside in California, I was a reporter at the Daily Bulletin, and I was watching our community fall apart. I was watching children in my own neighborhood killing each other. I was watching the drugs flood our streets. And I thought, you know what, maybe if I tell their stories, maybe if I explain what's going on, maybe if I do these big investigative reports, somebody will wake up and care. Most of the time people were like, yeah, that's not my problem. I don't live in that neighborhood. I'm not part of that group. Those are gang members. Not my problem. Until their children get killed. It becomes all of our problem. If I told you right now, and I remember saying this in Franklin County, Ohio, and I'll tell you why I'm getting there, that there was a predator waiting for your child. Waiting for your child outside their school, down the block, ready to take your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew from you, destroy them, take their life. You would get up from this table right now, you would be charging down to the school, you would be running down to your neighborhood, you would be doing everything in your power to save your child's life. This enemy is like the insurgents. When I was, covering the war on terror in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria, they hide in the shadows. They wait for you to get lazy, to turn your head, to not pay attention, and then they make their move. In fact, I remember in Franklin County, there were so many bodies of young people when fentanyl started to hit the streets that the Dr. Ortiz that I was working with, the coroner, she told me she was shaking as the bodies were coming in because a few of the bodies were actually the children of some of her closest friends. And then she had to make a call to get freezers because the morgue, her office, was not big enough to hold all the bodies. She had to put freezers outside to put children inside those freezers. The border is not just a border problem for us and for our children, but if I told you all these beautiful unaccompanied minors, these beautiful little kids as well, that were coming to this country without any adult supervision, being brought here by the most nefarious and horrific, I call them terrorists. I don't even want to call them trans-criminal organizations anymore. And Derek and I actually testified before the Ohio legislature on this. They should be designated as terrorist organizations now. If I told you that we could save lives by shutting down that spigot, that lie, that border, then why don't we? This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. Folks, this has nothing to do, just like everybody up here said, this has nothing to do with the color of your skin, or how much money you make, or how little money you make, or where you work, or how much knowledge you have, or how little knowledge you have of this. This has everything to do with saving our children's lives and saving the lives of future generations and providing an entry that is legal and just into this beautiful
not enslaving them in a nation that turns its head to the crimes that are happening to them. When I covered the war in Afghanistan, and I was thinking about, Tom, what you were saying, and Rodney, earlier about these 8 individuals from Tajikistan that came into the country. When I was covering the war in Afghanistan, there were many people, some of which my husband, who lost his eyesight in Afghanistan, fighting the war, we helped bring to the United States. They were our brothers and sisters. They stood alongside the United States and alongside what they believed to be terror. And we supported those few that came legally, the right way, with background checks and all of the necessary care that they needed, and they are here. And some of those great allies of ours are still there, waiting to get out. But let me tell you another story. I covered Al-Qaeda, and I covered the different groups in Afghanistan and Islamic State, and I was in Iraq in 2015, in Shingal, up on the mountain with the Peshmerga. And I knew what happened to many of my fellow journalists that lost their lives or were beheaded in a battle to try to tell this story, to warn America about potential enemies, not just China, but those that live in the shadows. And our border is wide open now. Wide open. There's no background checks, not really. And if you don't ping for any derogatory information, guess what? You're in the country. And that's exactly what happened with these men that were released. We're in a very dangerous situation in our country. We're in a situation that I don't think we've ever been in modern times. The danger is that real. The danger not only to your families, like I spoke about at the beginning, and to the children that are being trafficked, and I can answer a lot of those questions. I could talk about this forever. Oh, I guess I got a little bit of time. So let me just back up really quick, because I think this is important. I was in El Salvador recently. I was there for the inauguration of Bukele, and I've been to El Salvador several years before that. So I've seen the difference. And I've traveled many times to Guatemala, and most of the time when I travel to these areas of the world, I want to, as I did when I was traveling in the war zone, speak to the children, speak to the women, talk to locals, find out what life is really like. And I had the opportunity to interview a smuggler several years ago in El Salvador. This smuggler had assisted the cartels in moving a lot of people towards the United States. But he was also somebody that reached out because he could no longer handle what was happening with the children that he was smuggling. I'm not going to go into big details here because I do see we have children here. But these children that are being smuggled to the United States, some of them never ever make it to the United States. They are taken before they ever get to that border. There is organ harvesting. There is stories that are so far beyond my own comprehension of evil that I can't come to terms with it. I think it haunts me at night. I can't come to terms with it. A lot of the children that I talk to many times have been sexually abused, have been raped, part of the payment of coming into the country. And those are stories that you're probably not hearing. There is nothing good about having a lawless border. Yes, immigration is amazing. Legal immigration is incredible. I am the daughter, and I'm the first generation on my mother's side from Cuba. That is amazing to me. And I love her, and I love the fact that she worked in a factory, and I love the fact that she did everything to give give me a better life. And I want a better life for everyone that wants to come here the legal way. But I want to protect those children that are being trafficked. I want to protect our children from our enemies like China and these terrorist cartels. And I want you to be in that fight with us all the way. We can't do this alone. We have to do this with each and every one of you. You are being called, literally called, to save our nation and to save our children. Thank you so much. I think we need no introduction, of course.
I get 2 turns tonight. So I want to bring this back home a little bit before I hand it off to talk a little bit about the threats that are literally at our border that Jason will talk to you about. I want you to go back to that home analogy for a minute. I want you to stop and think about any time anyone that you don't know, or actually if you do know, has come to your door and knocked on your door. Every time that has ever happened, you've probably not thought about it, but you have done a very, very quick threat assessment before you decide if you can open the door or whether you're going to let that person in. And it's based on whatever is going through your mind and whatever's important to you. Do they fit in? Do I know them? Are they acting weird? Whatever, right? But there's a little bit of a threat assessment there. All border security is designed for the United States government officials, Customs and Border Protection officers or Border Patrol agents, to do that threat assessment on your behalf at the ports of entry or when we catch somebody illegally before we decide what to do with them. The difference is the government has outlined, here's the criteria of who and what gets to come in, right? All the agents really do is apply that. We have tools that help us determine what those threats are. You hear currently, you've probably heard, we talked about it a minute ago, the term vetting. So some of you may have heard some current government officials claim that all the migrants that are here, or illegal aliens, migrants, asylum seekers, you pick the term, that are here in Chicago have been thoroughly vetted before they were ever released from Border Patrol custody. Please remember, I was a Border Patrol agent for 30 years as I tell you this story. What that really means is, at a minimum, we put their hands on a scanner, and we take their digital fingerprints, we take a photograph of them, and we run that information, and we ask them what their name is. And there was a joke in the Border Patrol still today, has been since I was an agent years ago. Hey, before you tell me your name, you better pick one you really like, because when you put your fingerprints on that scanner and I type it in this computer, that is now who you are forever. So it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not. The reason it's not is because that's the validity of the information we're bouncing the records checks off of. Really, we're running that individual's history on known U.S. persons, people that have been arrested in the United States, people we've encountered around the world that we thought might be a threat. There's a lot of people around the world that are probably a threat that we've never interacted with. If their fingerprints weren't already put in that system, in most cases, if they hadn't already been in the United States before and arrested, we're not bouncing that off anything. There's no real data to check it off of. So, we've always known that though. So what you want as a taxpayer is to make the Border Patrol agent and the CBP officer make the interview, because that's the most important part. When they actually talk to the individual face to face, you want to make sure they have a set of skills to be able to detect lies and then be able to actually have time to talk to them. So some people don't like it, some people do, but this picture right here behind me, as a Border Patrol agent for 30 years, whenever I was asked, regardless of whether it was President Bush, Clinton, Obama, or Trump, I said that makes every agent more effective because it buys the agents more time. It takes away the cartel's ability to shove a bunch of people over here and then run another threat behind me. It takes away the ability to drive vehicles loaded with narcotics across the border. At least now they have to put it in a backpack. And most of all, it allows agents to spread out farther. So for the first 14 miles that we built of this in San Diego sector, the 2-layer, that allowed me, I was the sector chief back then, it allowed me to pull 150 agents out of that 14-mile area, it's actually about a 12-mile area, every 24 hours, and assign them to other duties like doing deep dive interviews and patrolling other areas where we didn't have a barrier. By the way, for you as a taxpayer, that was a $28 million return on your investment in that border wall structure just in salaries and benefits alone for every year for the life of that. It was not a vanity project. It was proposed by the United States Border Patrol. It was supported by the Clinton administration, the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration. It makes sense. Because at the end of the day, you need a law enforcement officer to talk to people. I'm going to give you a real example. Every child trafficking case that the United States Border Patrol has ever discovered and then handed off normally to ICE to do the deep dive interview, the deep dive investigation, has been because a Border Patrol agent or a CBP officer in port saw something weird. And they interacted and they separated the child from the adult that was with them in many cases. Or if it was a child crossing by themselves, they sat down. They started asking questions. They sat in front of a computer and they ran the address that the child gave them. And they started seeing cracks in the story. And they started asking more questions. But guess what? That takes time. When their Border Patrol agents are dealing with 5,000 illegal aliens in front of them every single day, and several hundred more that they can literally see running across the border just out of their reach, if you will, they have no time to do that interview. We just saw the same thing on a different level with the terrorist level. Most terrorists, going way back to early the DHS, I spent 5 years working on anti-terrorism issues. And again, going back to 2003 and 2004, we had good intelligence that smart terrorist organizations, just like smart, and we hate to admit it, they are smart, criminal networks, try to find people without criminal records to do their dirty work because they can move around the world, let alone the country, a little bit easier. We were dealing with that. We knew that was a threat. We know that's a threat now. So we spent millions of dollars training Border Patrol agents how to do good interviews. I don't know how much time I have. Guess what? That money is all being wasted today because, again, without time, they can't do it. And I need you to actually think about something for a minute, too, because some people look at the border, and because of how it's been reported over the years, they see this as a Mexico versus the United States. That could not be farther from the truth. It has never been that way, but today it's more disproportionate than ever before. Over half, way over half, of the people that Border Patrol's encountering today are not even from this hemisphere. 160 different nations, but what really important for this conversation about vetting that you need to understand is how many different languages that involves. The Border Patrol agents are taught to speak Spanish and English. Any other language requires us contracting an interpreter to help us with that interview. Now you have to call the interpreter, you have to get them on a line, you have to sit there and discuss, it's very, very difficult. So the agents are able to get basic biographical information to put in a computer and push them down the factory line. Let's go back. Border security is set up. Your tax dollars from day one of this nation, when we started doing any border security, was to prevent threats from being able to get into the country. We have domestic law enforcement that is supposed to be dealing with threats already in the country, right? And that's what you want them to be doing. Border security is supposed to be keeping these threats out, making sure we're vetting people. We have changed this. And when I say we, again, I'm not getting political. I was the chief under Trump and Biden. My first 27 years of my career, we had a strategy in place to do stuff like this to make sure agents could have time to do deep dive interviews, to make sure that we knew anybody or anything that was coming into the country to the maximum extent we could. It was never perfect. Actually met the criteria that you established when you elected officials to go to DC and put those rules in place. This administration, very publicly, this isn't me, this isn't my interpretation, this is literally public knowledge, this is what they campaigned on, said that they did not want to do a deterrent strategy anymore. They no longer wanted to prevent people from coming into the United States. They wanted to be able to speed up the process and make sure people could come in quicker. So while I was still chief, millions and millions of dollars were redirected from enforcement efforts to increase the processing speed of how fast we could actually take data and then push somebody down the pipeline. Even though we said the faster you push them through, it's like a ballpark. If you build it, they will come. Would become a tsunami that we could not control. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, There's a lot more threats out there than what we talk about, or even what I've seen on the news the last night and this morning here in Chicago, talking about local crime, talking about shoplifting, talking about the impact on the schools. Those are all legitimate and valid. But I'm going to hand the mic now to Jason. Jason was a Texas DPS officer for many, many years. He ran their intelligence division. But Jason is on the border in Texas still today and south. And I want him to talk to you a little bit about the other threats. What literally is on your front doorstep right now, not like some joke, right? You can go online and see this stuff. What is on our doorstep right now that the agents that I used to lead came to me and said, Chief, all of our agents are processing, but I have fully automatic 50 cal machine guns going off. I can see the muzzle blast. I can see the impact. Luckily, they're shooting east and west of each other. But what am I going to do when they turn north? And I didn't have an answer for them anymore because all of their partners were processing the 5,000 illegal aliens imported across the border in the last 24 hours. And to be quite honest, the 5,000 that crossed the day before because we weren't done. And some of the 5,000 that crossed the day before because we weren't done crossing them either. But Jason, can you talk a little bit about the threats that are literally coming to our doorstep?
Absolutely, Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jason Jones. I'm a retired captain from the Texas Department of Public Safety. It's an honor to be here with you tonight to talk to you about our common enemy, and I will be very frank with you tonight. I was so pissed off when I retired from the state police that you were not being told what these cartels had become and the authorities we needed to be successful. I went public to get them designated as foreign terrorist organizations, and I started that initiative 8 years ago. If you would have told me then that 8 years later we would still be here, with the number of Americans dying year after year, over 100,000 dead Americans from these cartels and their adjustment into a parallel government and moving these deadly substances into the country, I would have never believed it. Never believed it. That's where we are. And ask yourself one thing as I'm talking here about these cartels. Why haven't you been told by the Homeland Security Enterprise and the United States intelligence agencies? Because this is their job. Ladies and gentlemen, these cartels represent the most significant threats to this country, and the data validates it to what has happened to you and your families in this country. What is a cartel? They are not a gang. They truly have control in Mexico. The word cartel means agreement. It's an agreement between numerous underworld organizations in Mexico who agree to work together, and those who can collaborate the best become the largest. This is why the Sinaloa cartel today is operating in 54 nations around the world. Cartel Jalisco New Generation, known as CJG, run by El Mencho. They're operating in 48 countries, one of the youngest cartels, but yet had their rise to power so rapidly and quickly because they were moving their narcotics to Australia, Europe, and Russia. You see, what you're told is that this is a U.S.-Mexico problem. There were some major tripwires that took place that we were directly involved with. First, it was in 2006. This is under the Calderon administration as they began leveraging their most elite special forces to go after the cartels in Mexico. And we were there on the ground working this, and we were stunned. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to 06, they were truly organized crime. But as the administration began going after them, leveraging their most elite special forces, we were looking at these gun battles on our border, just as the chief was talking to you about, with light anti-tank weapons, RPGs, 50 caliber belt-fed machine guns, hand grenades, 40 millimeter grenades, and these new vehicles they called monsters, where they were just welding these big slabs of metal on the side. And I remember thinking, my God, how do we shut these things down? Because they were truly operating just on the Mexico side. We interviewed one of these young sicarios one time about these monsters, and I said, man, how the hell do we stop these things? And I'll never forget this. He said, oh, it's no problem. He said, you just run up to the door jambs, because back then they were really heavy. He acted like he was holding a weapon.
And he said you just push every round in between the door seams and eventually you can hit the driver, because back then, see, they were learning. Because, ladies and gentlemen, they were at war. And this is the thing that you have not been told. And I'll explain that about their perspective. It's very, very important here. From 06 to 2010, this was the insurgency. This is where they fought each other and the Mexican government, truly holding back the Mexican government. We were stunned. And I would come to Washington, and I'm screaming at the CIA at Langley, and I'm screaming at DHS headquarters, and I'm saying, we've got problems on the border, and they're saying to you, Jason, we hear you. We want you to know that we hear you, but as long as it stays in Mexico. This is what I'm always told. By 2010, a major tripwire. I want you to look up tonight when you're sitting in bed with your most loved one. Look up the Allende attacks. This is when the Los Zetas, they were basically the equivalent of GAFE, kind of in our country, U.S. Army Green Berets. GAFE Special Forces within Mexico left their military to work for the Gulf Cartel. And they were extremely hyper-violent. This is where the massacres in Allende happened. You may remember, and look this up, Allende, Mexico, 300 men, women, and children killed, heads chopped off, chopped into pieces, and guiso, because the cartels have a saying, you can't count a body that doesn't exist. This is why they cook them to ash. Look at the attacks in San Fernando, 72 migrants killed by, again, the Zetas, all shot because they wanted the Mexican government to come after their rivals for the Gulf Cartel. I worked all these. Look at the Monterey attack at the casino, where Miguel Trevino and the Los Zetas went out and executed 52 people, burned the casino down, all because they wouldn't pay the peso or the tax to the leadership. You see, this was their evolution, ladies and gentlemen, into terrorism. And yet we in America weren't told. We were looking where at the time? At Middle East terrorist organizations. And then there was another major significant tripwire in 2015. And this is what we call Operation Jalisco, as the Mexican government went after the head of Cartel Jalisco New Generation, known as El Mencho, extremely violent individual. And they shot down his helicopters as they came in. But what he said was stunning. He said to President Nieto, if you do that again, I'll come for Mexico City. And this was the final adjustment, ladies and gentlemen, from terrorism into a parallel government in Mexico. Now let me validate that statement that your government talks about. Because look at what happened as we went after Ovidio Guzman just over the last few years. Once in 2019, and then he was recently arrested. You saw the city of Culiacan erupt, and the world finally witnessed it. And as the Mexican government took him into custody, they were forced to release him. So this is where we see them today, truly as a parallel government. Now, at your border, you will hear from these pundits. They'll say, the cartels have operational control. You hear that shit all the time, right? You notice they can't ever articulate to you how it works. They leverage what is known as the Halcon network. Halcon means falcon, lookouts or scouts. And very young ventanas, windows, begin working as lookouts for the cartels. They operate in South Texas, as far as I have personally seen and worked, 30 miles into the U.S. In Arizona, 70. And they leverage two-way handheld encrypted radios and encrypted apps that communicate back to what we call Central on the Mexico side. And just as the panel has talked about, everything that you see on national television is coordinated. These are coordinated operations. So when you see the big groups, and you see the reporter walk up and he sticks a microphone in one of the migrants' faces and he says, tell me your story. That's part of it. But what you're not being told is how they funneled all these people for a reason so that they can move any other product they wanted at a different gate. Because every bend in your river in South Texas, they call it a gate. And they check on and they check off just like law enforcement. They never shut down. And the worse the weather is in South Texas, the better and more product they move because it's easier. Finally, they collaborate with US-based street gangs and what we call Tier 1 gangs. And I need you to hear me on this. I testified before Congress this year, and I held up wristbands that I broke the story on in February of 2021 as the Gulf Cartel adjusted from smuggling into the trafficking of men, women, and children, and we sent this virus across the country. You have to understand from their perspective, and their perspective matters, they are at war. And when you sit down with these young people and you talk to them, they will tell you that. And the reason that's important is because they will not stop because they can't. They do not care about us, meaning the federal government. They do not care about the Mexican government. They have paid them off. What they care about is their rival. And if their rival builds a better product like fentanyl, then they better make parafentanyl. If they make parafentanyl, then the next cartel better make serafentanyl or mix in xylazines. This is why they have weaponized fentanyl, and our families and families around the world are paying for it in the lives of Americans. Every day has to be a sense of urgency to go after them because they will tell you, we are out of control. We can't stop. We're worried about what this other cartel is going to do that can make a better product, buy more RPGs, and come in and take over our territory because they battle for strength. You'll still hear that they're battling over territory and drug trafficking routes. No, they want to take over more power, and that's why they move globally. Now, I want to tell you one thing here, because I'm out of time. I'm going to close here with this. For you to know when we have success is when we get the foreign terrorism designation, ladies and gentlemen. That is when we are going to get authorities to start going after them. The last part of this I want to say, because I know as I'm sitting here, there are families hurting in this room. I know there are many of you that have been impacted by these cartels, and I mean this to the very core of who I am. We have been at this for 8 years to get new authorities. Don't let anyone tell you that these cartels are not beatable, because they absolutely are. Don't let anyone tell you that they're this mystical thing that we just can't take on, because we have done it. And it's all about collaborating globally and building a unified command. But I will say this, and I say it publicly all the time, and I mean it. We are coming for them. Those who have hurt so many American families, so many Mexican families, it is absolutely unacceptable in people around the world. And when we're done, there will be nowhere on planet Earth they can hide for what they have done to so many people. God bless you. Thank you for having me. Put your hand out, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll bring some local officials up. But before I do that, did I or did I not put a hell of a team together? I'm going to wrap it up with this. We're going to bring local officials up. Look, I get asked all the time, hey, Roman, why are you always yelling at Congress? Why do you need to testify screaming at Congress? Why are you so emotional boxes? I'll tell you why. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off about what we're all talking about here. We got 148,000 Americans dead from fentanyl poisoning. We got a 600% increase in sex trafficking of women and children. We got 450,000 children that crossed the border in the hands of cartels. God help them, what they went through. 366 people on the church watched us on the southern border, twice as many that in the northern border is what I'm talking about. When's enough enough? When's enough enough? So my goal here tonight is not to educate you, but to piss you off. Give you a broken heart. So when you leave here tonight, you're going to take some action. You're going to get involved. You're not going to sit and be quiet. You're going to stand up. You're going to do something. Because I'm telling you folks, while I'm sitting here tonight talking to you, while you're sitting in the chair in a nice buffet and everything, a child is being raped while we speak. Women are being raped while we speak by the criminal cartels. Someone's going to die tonight at the hands of the criminal cartel. Someone's going to die tonight, either in the river or in the desert. While we sit here tonight, that is what's happening. That is the truth. I started in War in 1984. I spent 34 years doing this. I've held enough dying children. I've held enough dead children. I've talked to enough little girls who were raped multiple times by the criminal cartels. When you get on your knees, you talk to a 9-year-old little girl who was raped multiple times by a bunch of men. when everything innocent and pure in her has been stolen, when her life will never be the same, when you look in her empty eyes, you'd be pissed off too. So get pissed off. We have a right to a secure border. You can't have national security without border security. And they can attack me. I can call the worst of the worst. Half this country hates my guts, and frankly, I don't give a shit. Because they don't know who I am. And they're don't try to sign us up here, but I'll tell you right now, these patriots, they're not going to shut us up. We're going to speak the truth to the American people about what's happening at that border. People are freaking dying. And Americans at record numbers. I've met a couple of Asian moms every night who bury their children with fentanyl. I've met thousands have approached me in the last couple of years who lost their children. You want to talk about family separation? They buried their children. No parent should ever bury a child. And that's why we're raising hell. And that's why we're going around the country educating American people. So I want to thank you very much for coming tonight. We have some more coming. Thank you very much. There's Jason Jones. Jason Jones.
Dr. Rotundo, Devin, Pastor Lori, Latasha, you guys come on up here. So we're going to talk about, we're going to have some of the local community leaders talk about the effects and impacts on our community and our neighborhoods. We were supposed to do this earlier, but I got a little confused.
All right, so we do this. I was originally going to do the interviews, but if you know Jason Jones, he just spent weeks on the inner cities, seeing the crime, seeing the drug crisis. He's great at doing interviews. That's what he does in his own company. So, Jason, I'm going to turn the mic over to you to talk to these local officials.
Absolutely. Hey Doc, how's it? Good. Let you guys go ahead. Open it up.
All right, well, thank you very much. What an outstanding panel we just heard from. I think we should give them another huge round of applause.
You need to speak up. I didn't think I heard you. I don't want to speak. I can go.
So just very briefly,
That's from here. You're the head of
my name is Dr. Shadi Valdez from Chicago. I do a great deal of work amongst the ethnic communities, the religious faith community, across the city, the state, and even across the country. I am a Latino, not a Latinx. I'm a Latino, and yes, thank you. And we are concerned about our borders. We are concerned about the illegal immigration. But before I hand the mic to my colleague here, let me say this: as a Latino, and as a man of faith, a man involved in among the community, we are very familiar with the setting, with the community that is being challenged by the recent entry into our country by men and women from around the world that are here illegally. So we hope to be able to answer some questions and be able to just give you something to ponder on as we continue moving forward.
My name is Devin Jones. I'm the 18th Ward Republican Committeeman, which is just north of here in the Ashburn community. That's actually where Terry is. Well, kind of sort of. He's really from the suburbs, but close to where I am. opened the Booker T. Washington and Ida B. Wells Renaissance Center, so the first permanent Republican office on the south side of Chicago is right up the street from here on 85th. Who are part of that, one is right here on the stage, and then Ronald Fields is also your 21st Ward. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. I was a Master of Arms. Law enforcement and anti-terrorism force protection. So basically, I just did security on aircraft carriers and different things like that. And I'm a former Catholic school teacher. I taught theology and Latin in the Catholic school system. I currently, when I came to teach in Latasha's homeschool co-op Latin and civics, what else? Prior to running for a commitment in 2020, I started a reentry ministry in Central Ohio, where we basically developed like 15 things that we had to do to help people who were returning from prison get back on their feet, to reduce the recidivism rate by about 90%. So that was out of Columbus, Ohio. Right now, my passion really is to take all the stuff that panel talked about, and to get people like you all to take that righteous anger and to really do something with it, something productive, not just a lot of political fluff, but real things. Election judges, poll watchers, we need commitment, we need people to really return the Republican Party back to its original values. That's what we do in the Southside Republicans is we follow the original Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Abraham Lincoln principles of the Republican Party, not what you see today. And we are unapologetic about that. And so we want you to rise up and to really restore this party back to what it is, which is an America first and to be America only party. We are not looking out for other people, but we can't look out for the citizens that are right next door to us, but we can't look out for ourselves. That's our tax money. You open your wallet every 2 weeks or every week to pay the federal government and the state government. Your home equity is taxed. Your gas is taxed. Your vehicle is taxed. Your shoe, everything that you wear is taxed. Your groceries are taxed. And so that money it really shouldn't leave your household, but if it does, it should be used to make sure that you are good and not to make sure that foreign nationals are good. So that's what we do in the Southside Republicans. We have a table over there. And so we take your values and work with you to put that into authentic policy that is America first and America only.
So again, thank the panel for that extraordinary updated history in terms of what is happening in our country. I am Latasha Fields. I'm here with my husband, Ronald Fields, and I thank God for him. Come on, give it up to my husband. Yes, yes, yes. My husband and I, we are 18 years home educators. We're homeschooling we are the founders of Empowering Parents United Communities. We're also the founders of Christian Home Education Support System, which is a homeschool co-op and micro school. So we have a basic micro school where we have currently 60 students enrolled. And I'm proud to say that my husband and I, we graduated our second homeschool graduate, our son, graduated from high school. We are fortunate to total. We have a homeschool college grad. She's almost 28 years old. Amen. And our son is 17. We have two more. Our 15-year-old son and our 8-year-old daughter. So we're very excited about that. And as Devin said, we do a lot of work with the Southside Republicans. And so we are big on 1854 to work on that platform. And from that perspective, I was honored 2 years ago, I ran on Max Solomon's campaign as his lieutenant governor. And so that was an indoctrination, the sexual indoctrination, the political dogma that is happening to our children on those indoctrinated campuses is beyond wicked and evil. And so we are definitely advocates of exit to protect your children. And I know that don't sound everybody, but that's the way to protect your children. If you can sacrifice everything that you are to protect your kids. And I hear a lot that people say it's a luxury. Well, I just want to tell you that there is a lot. It's not a luxury to homeschool. It's a life or death situation to homeschool. It is a sacrifice to teach your children, to pull them out of so that's what we're here today. And I know we're going to get into how illegal immigration and as they call foreign nationals, the asylum seekers, how they're affecting our education system, especially in the city of Chicago, how the CTU and our governor is giving millions on top of millions and millions of dollars to these families while children in the city of Chicago are in desperate need of a quality education. Our children in the state of Illinois, only 27% can do math proficiently. Only 35% can read. That's the state. And in the city of Chicago, we have 83% of black children not able to read at grade level, and 92% are not able to do math efficiently. And we have a lot of people that want to constantly encourage sending children into those woefully unconstitutional, indoctrinated cesspools. We have to make a decision. And so I'm going to say we're big on Booker T. Washington, because I just want to say that we've had our own school before. Even before that, with the previous schools, we had our own schools before. And so this is not a new phenomenon. And that, you know, there's some according to scripture. We're just saying we're going to pass the baton, and we're going to continue to mobilize and empower parents and to create one-room schoolhouses, micro school, homeschool, co-op, high, etc., private school. Because everybody else up here today is saying there is a dire need to protect our children. And I'm sorry to let you guys know, our government education system is a part of this criminality that we're hearing on today.
Well, man, that's hard to follow. First, giving honor to God and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. My name is Pastor David L. Arnold Jr. I'm the co-pastor at Universal Baptist Church, Harlem, Illinois, as well as Firm Root Community Church, Chicago. Full of lack of knowledge of people who perish. And let me thank Colonel Tom Coleman and all the guys that came. Thank you, give them a round of applause because I'm glad that full of lack of knowledge of people who perish. And while we was at each other's throats, the government that we paid turned against us and help us create this void so we can see what we got right now. I'm not going to be long. I'm going to say this. I'm a warrior for Christ. I grew up in Chicago on the south side where it was all white. I stayed there till I turned black. I went off to college, started my first business at 17. I raised 5 grown children. And I've never seen this country in the condition that it is right now. So it's time for the American people to put aside all of our differences. It don't matter whether we are black, red, green, or what. We all bleed red. We all are suffering. We're all Americans. And it's time for the American people to unite, take this country back, move these states, and these people of our country, and return
That's fantastic. Thank you all. Pastor, I want to start with you. Can you talk to us about, because as we all know as pastors, you are on the ground. You are listening to your constituents. What are you seeing as a direct link to the southern border and how it's been opened up and impacting your system?
Well, a lot of people in Chicago, especially in the black community, did not really realize the big impact that it was making. And it's been that facade to keep black folks voting in the plantation of their minds for the Democrats. But it wasn't until Donald Trump took over and he closed the borders, and once our borders was closed, then we had some type of substance and continuity in the country. It wasn't until Joe Biden and the Democrats took over, they opened our borders, They inundated us with all sorts of drugs. Our community now, especially the black community, we have awakened. No longer are we going to sit back and watch the as a political football for 60 years. Malcolm X said that. And so the black community is alive, is well, and as
Democrats, not the Democrats.
Mexican Americans,
Democrats.
Asian Americans, we all are Americans. I'm asking all the other Americans to rally around the black community and help us rebuild, get our family structure back so that we can rerun America again. Because that's the only way we're going to survive, is one nation under God.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how some of your folks are being impacted as well? What you're seeing specifically in the community? Is it fentanyl? Is it cocaine? Is it the drug epidemic? Is it the smuggling? What is it that you're feeling here in your community?
Well, thank you very much. The Latino Christian evangelical community is receiving these families, these individuals that are coming to our country. Yes, they've entered into our nation illegally, but honestly, when they hear about, as an example, the word Democratic or Democratic Party, these words, what they think of or what comes to mind is not so much the ideologies of a party or a party that supports them, but rather democracy. That's the mentality that they have. When they come into our communities, they wind up on shelter or out on the streets. They eventually wind up at our churches, Spanish-speaking churches. They're asking for assistance. They're asking for guidance, whether it be legal guidance or just simply to learn about the everyday decisions that one makes as a resident in our town or our communities. However, the greatest impact right now for our churches is the financial impact. Because they come to us, they come to the churches, they come to the pastors, asking for all forms of assistance. The church wanting to show love, the church wanting to support these individuals, not because they agree. And let me share this with you. We have with us tonight an individual who is part of an organization that has over 40,000 Latino pastors across the country. And he can confirm what I'm about to say, simply because we are Latino ministers or pastors or faith leaders. It doesn't mean that we agree with the illegal entry, these illegal immigrants coming to our nation, but rather we keep in mind the Christian principle of caring for those who are in need, providing water to those who are thirsty, clothes to those who are in need of being clothed. So the greatest challenge right now is the financial burden to the churches. Then we have the burden of really not knowing the background, not knowing whether or not we can involve them in different programs and activities. Is it hurting the Latino community? It is causing division, great division amongst the Latino community. We're so grateful for Bukele. We just referred to him, the president of Salvador. Milei in Argentina. We're grateful for Milei. We don't know what's going to happen in Mexico with the new president, Chaumet. But we do know this, that in the United States, because of the illegal immigration amongst the Latino community, it is quite divided. It is quite divided. So we as pastors, as ministers, have to confront both sides as citizens in this country, believing in the rule of law, a nation of laws, supporting this nation, submitting to the laws, but at the same time realizing that they're at our front door and they need assistance, they need care, they need guidance.
I wanted to respond to you, Master. I made new pastor for 4 years, but I've been a man of God all my life. And one thing that I have a problem with my previous brothers that are pastors, Christ said these words, greater works that you should do after I'm gone and I send the Holy Spirit. That means men and women of God control this earth. It's up to the clergy to make sure that we have God-fearing people in political positions. So the reason why we see this problem is because the men of God have not stood up and said no to the politicians. They let their churches be inundated, politicians coming in, giving them the 501c3 money. I don't care about the 501c3 money. I care about the people in this country first. So when you say that you're worried about the illegal aliens, I'm not worried about them. I do have feelings for them, but what I'm worried about is the veterans that I go down on the battle of the church. What I'm worried about is our children killing each other out here with no guidance, and nobody has given them spiritual indoctrination. They teach our children they can read, they can be transgenders, but what about teaching them about God for once? What about giving them some moral standards and integrity? So right now as pastors, we have to stop being afraid. Christ wasn't afraid. He stood up and he turned the temple out and said, don't make my Father's house a house of merchandise. And the reason why our country is in this condition is because the men and women of God, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a bishop, have not stood on the word of God of greater works that you should do after I'm gone and I send the Holy Spirit. I am a child of the Most High. God gave me this world and I refuse to give it over to any government, any person, any entity, because we, as men and women of Christ, run this earth and we have to stand on it just like that.
And have the same in that regard, because in Texas, I will tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, our hospitals are overrun, our schools, they don't even know how to communicate to some of these kids because they're coming in from countries over 171 different nations. Are you guys feeling that as well and seeing challenges from parents?
Yes, and again, it is a huge problem that we're hearing from parents, because again, my children are not in public school or CPS schools, but again, my organization, we do hear a lot from parents what's happening. I think the biggest problem is, as most of us know, is the resources that are being allocated to the illegal immigrants. And again, you have in Chicago public schools, you have a population of roughly 47% or Hispanic or Latino, and out of that 47%, depending on what data you read, CPS data or ISBIS data, Illinois State Board of Education, you're looking at 9,000 to 7,000 of these students are currently in Chicago public schools. And so right now, Governor Pritzker and the CTU are advocating for millions upon millions. So we just passed a $17.38 billion budget for the state for the education. And so the CPS budget is roughly a little over $9 billion. And so the CTU is advocating for $2,000 per asylum seeker student. And then on top of that, they want an additional $188 million just to teach these kids.
Did you say $9 billion?
Yes.
My God. Is the federal government helping you all at all?
Yeah, they get money from the state and federal government, absolutely, absolutely. So it's millions and billions of dollars that are literally being allocated just to these students, these illegal alien kids that come across the board. And again, when you look at the proficiency of the academics level, when you look at what is happening, because again, 47% are Hispanics, the total population of CPS. In CPS, only 35% are black students, 35%, and only 11% are white. So that's the total population of CPS. So when you look at the 47% that are Hispanic, the 35% that are black, and the 11% that are white, you're talking about a 323,000 total population. So out of 323,000, that's 113,000 that is black, that's 151,000 that is Hispanic, and that is a little over 23,000 that is white. So when you when you look at the resources that have been allocated, we have this systemic problem where black children are being left behind, and all this money is being allocated. You got the CTU, you got all this black leadership, like they care about what's happening to black kids, but yet you're going down the smart bill and they're lobbying to give illegal immigrant children $2,000 per kid. And again, not to be redundant, the Hispanic population is reading better than the black population in Chicago Public School. Yes, they are. And our children are at 83% of them are not reading on grade level. When you take 83% not reading on grade level out of a population of 113,000, you're looking at 98,000 kids can't read at grade level. And then you take that same 113,000 and 92% of them are not proficient in math, and you got the audacity to go advocate for billions of dollars to teach asylum seekers. You want to continually allocate all these resources and not even taking care of the black children, the black Americans in your city? That's a problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important point because this is not being talked about in Texas. To give you a great example, the state of Texas and the Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star is now $13 billion. And I'm not even getting to this part of it yet. This is just to try to keep the crime wave that we felt from this at bay. Mr. Jones, would you mind please commenting as well? Are you seeing an impact like this to budgets, and what is that?
Well, as far as budgets, yes. I mean, when you think about the city just allocated another $70 million, the county allocated $70 million, the state is allocated $183 million, plus another $406 million in healthcare. We've already spent $1 billion since 2020 for Medicare and Medicaid, for foreign nationals. I work with veterans. I do sexual assault victim advocacy. I work with homeless veterans. And you mentioned veterans. I am a veteran myself. And when I see that for what we call foreign nationals, the government comes to them to ask them how can we help. For black people, we have to seek out the government in order to find that help. Sometimes we don't even know what resources the federal government offers. But the thing is this, if the government is offering a resource, that is coming out of our resources. Those are, this is not something like money just falling from the sky every time it rains, or God dropping greenbacks on the ground like he did for when they were coming out of Egypt. This is actual money coming out of people's pockets. So I know that my family would rather spend money for a veteran like me than for someone who crossed the border who maybe was human trafficked or trafficked someone else. This is a lot of money that's being thrown out of our community where we have dilapidated business, dilapidated properties. We got vacant lots, you go to Inglewood, Austin, some of these other communities, and there has been nothing but economic disinvestment, over taxation, over policing. Meanwhile, migrants are getting those vacant lots. They're getting apartment buildings, they're building new apartment buildings. Christine McGovern mentioned that there's a shelter on 8th and 5th and Cicero. That's right down the street from my house. I live right over there. I'm over there all the time. So this is dangerous. There's an increase in rapes, robberies. That's a financial strain because people have to figure out how to protect themselves. And we will protect ourselves, I promise you that. People have to figure out how to pay these extra taxes that they cannot afford. There's boots on people's cars all the time on my block because they cannot afford the $100 city sticker every year, which a portion of that money doesn't go, it's not going to fix roads because the potholes are in it. It's going to help foreign nationals. And so it's like a humiliation ritual. And I get that we are all often angry, but there are things that we can actually do. We have actually created an ordinance to repeal the sanctuary city, the welcoming city policy in the city of Chicago. A lot of people don't know that in Chicago, you don't have to wait for an alderman to propose legislation. And so that's something that we have done. And in that legislation, which is right on that table over there, it prohibits the use of municipal funds for anyone who has a pending asylum claim, because those people are the responsibility of the federal government. It prohibits law enforcement and administrative officers from denying cooperation with ICE and federal law enforcement as a And so we have tools within our disposal, first and foremost, coming out of government systems, so then there's no reason for them to tax you. They don't have a reason to do it. It starts with us making sure that our families are not participating in using illicit substances, so that there's no reason for these cartels to continue to think of ways to have fentanyl and whatever the other type of fentanyl they talk about. So it's a major financial impact. We are thrust into poverty because of it. And we used to have over 1 million people in Chicago. We're down to under 800,000 at this point. Because we're
I'd like to ask each of you, start with Dr. Martinez, we'll just go and give us a closing statement here, so what you want the folks to know.
You know, you just heard my brother talk about the fact that within the community of faith, clergy, pastors, especially, and I think you were directing yourself more so to the Latino pastorate, that we need to stand up and that we need to stop being afraid. I'm in that community. It's not about having to stand up. It's not about being afraid. It's about the fact that those who can't vote don't come out to vote. Those who do vote, they vote for the wrong people, time and time again. As I sit with older men and women and we talk about these concerns of ours, we constantly, especially in Chicago, but throughout the state, you'll find this to be the case. We run into people, whether they're African American or Latinos, who are in office. Within the Latino community, we realize, as an example, that the most radical legislators that we have in Illinois are Latinos. We understand that. We understand that the most socialists are Latinos. And so we recognize the fact that in order for change, it needs to start with our vote. In order for a vote to really make a difference, we need to encourage those who can vote to come out and make that difference and be responsible. Latinos are conservative by nature. They are. They are about family, about freedom, and they are about faith. But again, when we continue to elect leaders who are supportive of these ridiculous ideologies, we're going to continue to find ourselves in this situation.
Thank you, sir.
I don't want to make it about black versus white or Latino. I am an American freedman, which we are all black. But I don't care if you came from Africa. I don't care if you came from Europe. I don't care where you came from. If you're here illegally, you have to go back home. We have way too many so-called asylum seekers here in this country. And when you think of 40 million American freedmen, those are people who have been here since before the Constitution was the Constitution. We are as American as sweet potato pie, because sweet potato pie was American pie before apple pie was. A lot of people don't know that, right? So I'm talking about history. I'm talking about a culture. I'm talking about American culture. And so what you see in American freedmen and black people, and the three of us sitting up on this stage, and some of you who are out there, what you see is the totality of American history and American culture. And what we have right now is a group of people that have been coming here for over half a century at this point. We're not just talking about now, we just know about the 40 to 60,000 people who just arrived in Chicago. By the way, a ward is 56,000 people. So you're talking about one entire ward has been replaced with non-citizens already in under 2 years. So we're talking about the erosion of our history. We're talking about the Constitution and the rule of law being under attack. We're talking about what it means to be fundamentally, quintessentially American is being destroyed by a bunch of people who are peddling other people and illicit substances across the border and killing us. And so we have have got to stand up and we have got to fight streets. I'm going to stop. I know there's time here. I know they gonna go all in. But I am telling you that this is great. We can clap, we can scream, we can shout, but we have got to start fighting strategically with knowledge, with wisdom, understanding, and most of all, with God. We have got to be fighting a godly fight. We have got to be putting ourselves out of government systems. Because the government has got black shoulders. This is not the government that's on these shoulders. And I hope you all know who Jesus Christ is. When I say God, I don't mean just some random God. I'm talking about specifically Jesus Christ. Unapologetic, okay? So, you know, get into the Bible, get into that Constitution, vote these people out, and if you can't vote them out, then make their lives a living hell for 365 days a year. They legislate every day. They're not just there on November 5th, they're there every day. So be there with them because they do it in
everything's on autopilot, so.
He works for Lindell. He came in from Ohio.
Yeah,
Get you guys all the videos. So.
Yeah, I work for Mike Lindell and for Lou Dobbs. Yeah. And then do a little moonlighting with General Flynn over at Patriot TV. So.
We have to continue to pray, right? We have to pray, we have to fast, we have to intercede.
Somebody's got to do it. You know, similar to Terry, I had a long career running staffing companies, but somebody's got to do something right now. So.
God said we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness, principality, rulers in high places. So we have to know who our enemy is, and it's the devil. So my husband and I say all the time, devil, that's what you do, you won't do it in peace. That's what you do, you won't do it in peace. So we have to continue to rise up, stand up, and continue to fight for this country. Yes, fight for our families, but for me, more important, we gotta fight for our kids. Come on, we gotta fight for our children. You know, because the children are the next generation. We don't stand and fight for living what kind of country are we gonna see 5 to 10 years from now if we don't protect our children from all these fiery darts that are coming. Not just the education. This team talked about the drug epidemic, everything, the social indoctrination, the sexual indoctrination, the low proficiency with their academics. What is this system preparing our children to do? And what God has been laying on our heart, that we're looking at a new modernized, socially engineered enslavement if we don't get our handle on what's happening in our education system. And as the word of God said, continue to fight the good fight of faith. Amen?
Pastor David L. Lowry Jr. You can find me at ronald.com, David Lowe 1057. You can also find me
Thank you for coming to Chicago. Appreciate it.
Yahoo or YouTube, Moments of Truth, 9920. Well, I want to say this and I want to be cool. The only way America is going to be great again is that we have to get rid of the color line and we all be Americans. That's just the bottom line. But to my community, to the black community, my community suffers because we don't take care of ourselves. See, black people spend more money than everybody put together. We have just become consumers of the world. So we can't sit around and cry about what we don't got, because if we put our money together just like every other community and invest it back into ourselves, we would be in this position. If we took the time to take a look at the people we elect, like Lori Sugarfoot Lightfoot and Brandon No Brains Johnson, if we took the time and research and look for things to better ourselves, we would be in this position. And so I take responsibility for where we're at. It's the black leadership that has put us in this. We can't blame white America for where we're at. There was a hand for white America to where we got, but we can't look at that no more. This war is good and evil. This war against blacks is against whites. This war is a spiritual war, and if the American people, and I'm telling you, we're in the last days. If we as Americans right now don't stand up against the evil that we see in the White House, if we don't stand up in the evil we see in the schools, if we don't stand up what we see with the illegal aliens in our country as an American citizen, I would rather die on my feet than on my knees. It's time for America to be one. Let us take the
Thank you. Good job. Great job. So we're going to close this out. I know Paul has a few questions that he gathered from the audience, so we're going really late. He's going to read off a couple questions. You know, I want to thank Tom and his whole team. He came here, our panelists, the United Alliance folks. Mike Lauber here, he's from the Legit TV guys. Right, he came from Ohio to help us. And Victor, where's Victor? Victor said something that was really important. Hey, Victor, remember you were talking about these people owe the cartels money, right? You know, so there's people that came over here purposely to hurt our country, right? They don't belong here. But there's also people that came here, husband and wives, right? And they owe those cartels. They might not have came here with the intent to hurt and commit crimes, but they gotta pay them back, right? So these people that are good people and fathers are gonna be forced to do things they don't want to do, right? So we're gonna read some questions. Here you guys go.
Everybody can quiet down, please. Give us some questions.
No, that was your fault.
Alright, so we got some questions for our panel. Some of these are border specific, there's some about voting and so forth. So the first one, have we identified all the underground tunnels the cartels are using to smuggle illegal aliens into the country? So I know that there's obviously some illegal tunnels that they found. There's some different points of entry other than the border crossings and the river area and so forth. Are we, how much of that are we aware of? And, you know, is there more work to do that?
Sure, so if you guys are listening to the region here, if you guys didn't hear, the question was specifically about clandestine cross-border tunnels. I need you to think about something for a minute. I'm going to answer the question. It was about how many do we know about them all. I'm not going to tell anybody we know about them all, but guess why the cartel digs tunnels? Because we made it very hard for them to drive trucks across the border 5 at a time full of narcotics and illegal aliens. So as the border was getting more and more secure, we were seeing an increase in clandestine cross-border tunnels. But here's the other thing, we have entire teams and technology focusing on those tunnels. It takes about a year to build one of those sophisticated tunnels with the railroad tracks and everything you see, and a little over $1 million. That's great, because our intel usually identifies it way before they actually smuggle something through it. We wait because we keep them busy, and then when they pop out the other end, then we seize their narcotics, the illegal aliens, and we shut the tunnel down after they're out all that money. But please, right now, I guarantee the cartel's not spending the time on building tunnels because they don't have to.
Folks, excuse me, can I get everybody's attention, please? Excuse me, folks, can we quiet down? And we have some people who flown in from all over the country. Excuse me over there. Excuse me. And we have some folks that have taken their time to fly from across the country here to talk to us about some very important things that are going on in our country. Okay, they're experts. They come here, a lot of them on their dime, all right? And they're patriots, and they're sacrificing for our country. So if you have conversations that you want to have, and you don't want to listen to this, go ahead, do it outside. But right now, they're taking some questions that some of you gave to me, okay? So please be respectful. Let's listen to what they have to say. So the last question was about underground tunnels and the other means for legal entry into our country. Do you want to just give a synopsis of what you just said, now that everybody's a little quieter?
So I'll streamline it. The only reason cartel digs sophisticated cross-border tunnels is because they have to. It's extremely expensive. When we were doing all this, they needed to do it. Right now, unfortunately, they don't need to do it. Things are just pouring across the border. You got to also remember it's the United States. It's not the southwest border. So we have threats, different threats all over. We have smuggling via maritime coming up the coast. We still have aviation smuggling, and we have a significant smuggling around the northern border as well, year-round. But you're paying for Border Patrol to go actually interdict all those people, to actually maintain surveillance and make sure we catch them. But unfortunately, they're not out, because as we stated before, they're actually processing illegal aliens that cartel pushes across.
Can I add to that, Rodney, too, just because we're talking about the tunnels, but I want people to think about the fact that after all these years, these decades, and especially the amount of money that the cartels have been able to amass due to the smuggling of, and I would say human trafficking, the hundreds of millions of dollars, they've been able to resource and out-resource our law enforcement in some capacities. They don't have to follow any rules. They can do whatever they want. They only answer to themselves. While they all have to follow the rule of law, the cartels don't have to. They use semi-submersible submarines. They use helicopters, drones. They build these tunnels. And unless we have people willing to stop them, they will continue to do it and find better and more innovative ways of kind of evading our law enforcement. So that's pretty scary when you think about it, when no one's actually, doing the job they need to be doing to stop them.
All right, thank you. The next question is regarding illegal aliens coming to the country and they have a baby or they have a family to bring in. We all know about Obama's Dreamers and how they fast-track citizenship. Can some of you expound on what is happening now? What is the current policy? If a legal alien has a child in the country now, what is the Biden administration trying to do to ensure whatever, that they become a citizen, or what the path is?
Well, one of the problems is, which I think needs to change, if you're in a country legally have a child, it's automatically a citizen. And that's a problem. And that's a driver of a lot of immigration. I mean, when I was director of ICE, and all the families came back under the Obama administration, we had a family search too. And Jay Johnson, who was the secretary of the War, we went looking for the families that crossed illegally that were ordered and removed by the judge. You don't even need to understand. You can call them asylum seekers all you want. But based on the 10 years of court data, immigration court data, nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border get ordered removal because they simply don't qualify for asylum, but they don't show up in court. So when we went looking at these family groups that were ordered removed, over 40% of them already had a U.S. citizen child or were pregnant. So it's regardless of if that's a racist thing, that's only that they're angry babies. No. The facts are allow them to have a U.S. citizen child. Now you say, well, illegal aliens don't qualify for social services. Well, actually they do, especially if you're a citizen child. So my belief is that if you're crossing with children across the border between the border countries, you're putting that child at great risk. I'm saying again, over 450,000 children were smuggled to the United States by criminal cartels. And we know for a fact right now there's over 85,000 missing. Who are they? I think you've heard up tonight, some are in forced labor. I mean, HSI, the HCA used to run. There's several investigators that find children in meat packing plants cleaning up hay trails at night. Forced labor. Some are involved in sex trafficking, some are going to be appearing in pornographic movies, some are little predators. These children are living a life of hell. So again, a secure border saves lives, right? When you secure the border and there's less illegal immigration, when it's down to 85% like it has been before, when 85% less people are coming, how many women are being raped? How many children are dying in the river or in the desert? How many pounds of fentanyl is it making into the country? How many non-suspect terrorists are crossing the border? A secure border matters, and I've asked every person, politician on the Hill on the other side, I would say,
Can you tell me the downside of the secure border? Please. You support secure borders? Give me the downside of the secure border. Less drugs, less rapes, less terrorists, less fentanyl. Cartels making less money. There's no downside of secure borders. Secure borders saves lives.
So sticking with
Let me have one thing. Guys, this right here, this saves lives. The wall saves lives. For the most vulnerable people, Ron will agree with me, this is the whole panel. The most vulnerable people come to this country with families, right? The women and children. They can't climb this wall, which means they're going to go to a place where there's no. What's going to be there to meet them? The men and women in green. The finest 1% this country has. The men wear that gold trip back, men and women wear that gold trip back. So they're first thing we're going to do is take care of the humanitarian need. This wall saves lives. Because the Border Patrol will tell you, the number one mission when people come across the first humanitarian issue, these people are in bad shape. Some are near death because of that journey. The men and women wearing green on place on the only humanity on that border are the men and women wearing green who save lives every day.
Most of those rich liberals have fences around their mansions, don't they? And that's for a reason. And so let's stick with the subject of the children and the child trafficking. This person asked, who runs the child processing centers? They mentioned a group called GARGA. Is the CIA involved in any of this? What government agencies are involved? And NGOs? Anything you can add?
Did you get your little mic?
It used to be, it was just a child. Border Patrol or ICE can only detain them up to 72 hours by law. We have to do no health and human services, Office of Refugee Settlement. It used to be, we built in 2014 and 2015 under the Obama administration, and I think it's just a fact. When families were surging across the border, we built family residential centers. Not jails, but more like a college campus, and we detained them long enough to see the judge, which took about, at a time of 38 days. So we held them long enough to see a judge. What happened? As I told you earlier, 9 out of 10 were when we removed the Sentinel qualified for society, put them on the airplane and sent home. And guess what? The border numbers changed because there was a consequence. They understood that when we detained long enough to see a judge, and most of them don't qualify. So, but what happened? The Ninth Circuit, Judge Dolly G decided, no, you can't hold them past 20 days. And I even did an affidavit saying, that's not time enough to see a judge, especially when the attorneys who represent them were asked what continuous is and asked for more time to put the case together. If you do this, and say we go over 20 days, if you do this, you will see massive family groups coming across the border. Of course, the judge said, oh, if you're a mom, no evidence of that, guess what happened? Record number of families coming across the border. So now what's happening, rather than, but this is what's happening around NGOs are being funded by billions of dollars, billions with B, for the care and feeding, take care of these people.
Where's that money come from, Tom?
You. So that's the current system. And I want to take one more thing. There are thousands of empty beds right now with us. At about $127 a bed per night. But the NGOs are spending much as $500 on hotel rooms. So get that. Why do I think? Because if they're in detention, here's what the Homeland Security Life Cycle policy says. I just told you 9 out of 10 get ordered removal. The Homeland Security Life Cycle report says if you're in ICE detention, you get ordered removal, you're removed 99.7% of the time. However, if you're not in ICE detention and your family, you get 6% of the time. That's the danger of not utilizing ICE detention.
This one is for Derek. Derek had mentioned during his speech, he had said something about going to Eric Holder with some of the concerns he had. This person was interested in what Eric Holder had to say in response.
So it was Operation Deadly Merchant. It was a very, very important initiative that we started because of all the deaths from the fentanyl coming from China at the time. But the Mexicans were delivering it, you know, and the Dominicans. And he was just kind of overwhelmed, and really, it was brand new. Like, people really did not have a good understanding of what was happening. Like, fentanyl coming from China was new. So there wasn't a lot of action, you know, he wasn't around that long, so nothing really developed. The DEA and the other agencies continued identifying this trend, but it's evolved like so much now, it's like out of control. One thing I didn't say, Sarah had a podcast this week and I was able to talk about it. So now, with all these Chinese that are coming through the border, they're setting up marijuana grow operations all throughout America. And what they're doing is they're importing Chinese pesticides. Okay, so think about that. Our government is in the process of legalizing marijuana. The kids think it's safe. And the Chinese are putting all this black market marijuana on the streets. And the THC's high. That's why the emergency rooms are seeing more and more kids with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, psychosis. And then what do? They take a pill to feel better. They take Xanax, but it's not Xanax, it's fentanyl. So to answer the question, not a lot was done, but in fairness to Eric Holder, there's a lot of blood on a lot of people's hands in this issue. And the politicians are horrible across the board. One last thing that's very important. Nobody on this panel is a politician. Okay?
Can I add something to that? So I went out with Congressman Mike Garcia, with a politician. This was a few years ago. And he met with me in DC and he said, "You won't believe this." I said, "Well, what would I'll believe anything you tell me." He goes, "We have marijuana grows all over the Antelope Valley and no one's doing anything about it. This is on private land owned by Americans. We have drug cartels, the CCP, Armenian gangs, and they're just taking over people's property and they're growing marijuana." I said, "That can't be true." And I was pitching it to one of the people over at where I work, at the newsroom at Fox. And they said, "That can't be true, that's a lie, that can't be true." I said, "No, I'm telling you." So we went out there and we took a helicopter. I went out there with the congressman and I flew over all of these marijuana grows and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion, being sent overseas to fund wars overseas. They were siphoning people's money. It would be like someone coming to your house and taking your water and rerouting it to grow their marijuana, and you couldn't get the city to stop it. It's that bad, to the point, and this goes right to what we were talking about. The majority of people that were working on those marijuana grows, it was eventually busted because we exposed it. And then finally the sheriff in Los Angeles County was able to take them down. But the thing was, they were actually putting people to work on the marijuana grows that were paying off their debt to the cartels for being brought into the country illegally. So it was all happening right under our noses, right in Antelope Valley, and even a congressman couldn't get the county to act on it. That's how bad this is.
I'm gonna have a quick example with that. What did all that bring? It brought a lot of crime, and it brought a lot of violence. In Fresno, California, about 18 months ago, there was a mass murder of an entire family, including a 10-month-old baby and the 16-year-old mother. They killed them all, execution style. I did a lot of hits on it on the news about it, because it was kind of weird. Like, that happens in Mexico all the time. Why would you kill them? Well, it's in the agricultural business, right in the middle, where they're doing these marijuana growing activities, and people get involved. And the cartel doesn't care. They don't care if you're a child. They'll just eliminate everybody. So it attracts that too. It brings the crime with it. You're seeing the crime here. We have enough of it, but now you're adding the criminal activity attached. And we talked to sheriffs and police all across the country. They're overwhelmed because they don't have more police officers. They don't have more sheriffs, deputies. As a matter of fact, they don't have any more budgets. They're being restricted by their mayors and the county judges. Yet the crime continues to happen. And all of us up here will tell you that not everybody that comes here commits crimes, but there's just too many that do. And we're talking about property crimes all the way to murder. If the Kate Stiley cases of the world, remember her? In San Francisco?
Yeah, San Francisco.
Yeah, and then again with Lincoln Riley. And I'm gonna give you another name. Lisbeth Medina, that you never heard of that name. But I met her mother, and her daughter was killed by a Guatemalan national illegally present in South Central Texas and bludgeoned her to death in her own bathtub before she went to a cheerleading parade. This happens all the time, every single day now. It's the crime attached to all these illicit activities.
Thank you for that. And we got one last question here. This is from our friend of the podcast, Sargis Sangari. I believe Mr. Holman was on his podcast as well. He has a website called the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. And he's a veteran who served in the Middle East and has done a lot of work with consulting and so forth in that area. And he asks, the most significant question I asked Mr. Holman was that if he should be given total control of the Department of Homeland Security, Border Security, Customs, Coast Guard, Homeland Security Investigations, and Air and Marine, which are federal law enforcement components within the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, how would he reorganize those force structures to protect the homeland more effectively?
I do the opposite of what's happening right now. Hey, look, the men and women of the Border Patrol, the men and women of ICE, they're connected, they should be. CBP is more than just a Border Patrol, they CBP inspectors and the Border Activity. I think that union makes sense. And I think the changes that need to be made are the changes which separate the law enforcement components, from the military components, to the service components. CIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services, is not a bad problem. They're in the import business, I've been in the export business. So I think that needs to be done. So we would separate the mission by what the duties are. What's happening right now, I think we'll all agree, is not working. The numbers are skyrocketing. But I'll say it again. I think Rodney said, go to CBP.gov when you got more time. Go to CBP.gov and look at the stats page. You're not going to hear this on the media. Go look for yourself. The Border Patrol is really good. When Rodney was there, they created this whole statistical page to educate American people on what exactly is happening on the border. So you have to listen to the spin from the right or to the left. Go look for the numbers yourself. And I guarantee you, if you look at those numbers, you're going to shoot yourself. Because I've been doing this 34 years, and I am just beside myself. The numbers that are coming, I've never, wildest dreams something like this kind of numbers. I started in 1984.
Just a quick follow on that. We have a certain unnamed candidate for president who likes to talk about a big deportation operation. So given that 34 years of experience that you've had and this unprecedented flow of illegal immigrants into the country and the danger it poses not only from a criminal perspective, but, an election fraud perspective and so forth, what type of realistic deportation operation are we going to be able to have with a candidate who's looking at securing the border and, common sense immigration policy?
Well, I've been in the export business a while. 3 years ago, Washington Post did a story. I was in my office downstairs, and my wife came running down with a paper. Says, "Look at this piece that did on you." And the first line of the story was Tom Holman deports people if you're really good at it. Well, I framed that. It's on my office wall. I wear that hat on. But look, people say, I see that news all the time. I'm not being broke. I'm just like a guy 34 years doing this. People say, well, that statement's racist. It's inhumane to say you're going to have the largest deportation operation in history. Well, look, I just told you, nearly 9 out of 10 people are getting order removal. What's the other option? Let us stay. Because if you do that, there's no consequence. If the judge's order, we spend billions of dollars on this process, and when they get to the end, and the federal judge says you must leave, here's your order of deportation. If that order isn't executed, then what the hell are we doing? Shut down the immigration court. Take the Border Patrol off the border. Because there's no consequence to violating our laws. It's a crime to enter the country illegally. Title 8 United States Code 1325. That's AOC. I educated her one day at a hearing. So it isn't inhumane or racist. It has to be. When you're on the heels of a historic Never seen before, illegal immigration on the border, we know 9 out of 10 will get ordered removed. There has to be an historic deportation operation, or none of this makes sense. That's what the law requires. And how many, which realistically depends on the resources. How many other agencies do we have? How many detention beds will we have? What will Congress give us for transportation funds? How many airplanes can we get? How many jails can we contract bed space on? If you start arresting in Chicago and you deport in that same day, there's a process. You got to contact the country. The country's got to agree they're a citizen national of the country. Then you got to get a travel document. Then you got to get landing rights. It takes a few days, so we want to have detention beds to hold people for a few days while we work that out. That's why the system works. But for anybody who says that statement's racist, it's bullshit. On the heels of historic illegal immigration, we've never seen before numbers, we're 9 out of 10 wounds. There has to be a deportation operation, or you're never going to fix the southern border if people know to get in the United States, yeah, I'll go through the immigration court, I get ordered movement, and I'll just be in a win, and I'll hang out long enough for the next amnesty to roll around. That's what happens. Only 6% of families leave that are ordered removed. Why? Because they're your next doctor. They're your next amnesty. They'll wait around for the next amnesty. Look, if we keep rewarding those behavior, we're never going to fix it. So that's why it's necessary.
I can just follow up because there was another question submitted that dovetails into this. The question was, it was a specific nationality, but that's almost irrelevant. The question was, what about countries that won't take their people back? If we catch people and they're ordered deported, but yet the country, as Tom just talked about, we have to actually coordinate the country. They won't take the country back. I'll just tell you there's two very different philosophies out there, and I'll let you fill in the blanks because I'm not political. One was Mother May I, and the other was you're going to take your people back or I'm going to make it hurt until you're willing to take your people back. We have much of a choice after this.
All right, folks, I'm going to end with this. I don't care what your opinion on illegal immigration is. I don't care. It's a very controversial subject. Always has been. Very emotional subject, illegal immigration. Well, these people are just coming for better life. They want to support the things. I get it. I get it. But when you have a crisis this big that overwhelms the world, Joe, I'm going to tell you, sometimes up to 70% of agencies pull off the line to take care of this humanitarian crisis. As Rodney says, they create gaps. They'll send a big group, so whoever's left on board handles that group, then the cartels take advantage. Regardless of what your opinion on illegal immigration is, when there's got a crisis this big, there's been sectors in the last 2 years where every agent, every single uniform was pulled off the line for days while they managed the overload. You don't think cartels have a field day with not one green uniform on 100 miles of border? Of course it did. So regardless of what your opinion is, here's what you tell your friends. They say, well, man, just come from a better life. Okay, I get it. But when you have a crisis this big, all these other bad things happen. 148,000 dead Americans with fentanyl. No one suspected terrorists coming across the border. Sex trafficking, women and children. That's why it matters. That's why it matters. So there's a right way to come to this country and a wrong way to come to this country. If you want to be a part of the greatest nation on earth, the first thing you do should be breaking our laws and entering the country and cheating the system. There are millions of people standing in line doing things the right way, taking their tests, doing their background investigations, paying their fees. None of us up here, I want to be clear, none of us are anti-immigrant. We all came from immigrants. We're anti-illegal immigration because of the tragedies you heard here tonight. So that's your fight back home. This isn't just about illegal immigration. This is about dead Americans. And look, over 1,800 illegal aliens that died across this border. Another story here. So that is the story. The story is death. The story is sexual assault. The story is terrorism. That's the story. So again, it's not about immigration. It's about border security. We can't have national security without border security. So get up, start raising now, and leave her pissed off tonight and take some action. I don't know,